All right, Frank, we're a go.
Let's do it.
I think that might be one of the first times there wasn't any technical trouble. Last time when I started the webinar, all of my audio and my video just went wonky and went haywire, had to come back in. I let the two panelists kind of fend for themselves, but they were talking some shop while we were waiting for people.
All
As
right. Well,
individuals start rolling in, if you don't mind, maybe throw something in the chat. Thank you for whoever has just celebrated. We
there we
appreciate
go.
it. We've got the chat going. Thank you very much, Tyler. I can't see you, but I'm sure you are looking sharp as well. Got a couple other people here. Throughout the session, I do try to keep up with the chat. Hey, Andrew, good to see you.
Oh, Andrew Ayers. Good to see him.
Good to see you. Robert, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. We'll give everybody one more minute, then I'll go through a couple other housekeeping items, introduce the man of the hour right here, and then we're going to jump right in. We're going to jump
Okay.
right in. Got a bunch of questions from just some of my clients, a couple trickled in through LinkedIn. The challenge here, Frank, even as a marketer. Hi, Raina. If it's, I apologize if I mispronounced that.
That
Really,
would be Rania. Hello,
Rania.
Rania.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining. Hello, hello. All right. We are going to reward those that were on time, Frank,
Okay.
and we're going to get in. We got a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover. And what I love most about this topic here is that I'm going to be learning just as much as the audience, right? Most times this is a little bit more geared towards the sales, the marketing, the technology, and while finances, and we certainly look at those numbers when we're evaluating marketing performance, right? But as far as managing them, tax planning, the strategy around that, I pay the pros to do it for me, right? You tell me what to
And
do.
that's what you should do.
So,
That's what you should do. You should not do this by yourself. Don't do this at home.
exactly, exactly. So once again, good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you are logging in, and welcome to another installment of the LegalFenix webinar series. First and foremost, I really want to thank you for giving us your time and attention. I know and understand that there's a lot of other things that you could all be doing with this hour. So really want to extend that appreciation and gratitude for spending it with us. We don't take that lightly. So hopefully this is jam-packed with valuable and some actionable insights that you can take back and prep before the end of the year. I am your host, if you do not know me, Ron Latz, founder and fractional CMO at LegalFenix. LegalFenix is a legal marketing consultancy. We're really designed to help law firms protect their marketing investments and run campaigns that actually work. And today we're tackling a topic that I think most people avoid, Frank, right? Their own finances. So while some of the firms that I've worked with, they have built strategy into other components of their business, like marketing or their teams and operations and their cases, a lot are still guessing when it comes to their money. So to help us fix that, that's why I brought you on, Frank, my good friend and colleague of Palm Wealth Partners. Frank is a specialist in helping firms reduce their taxes. He helps them protect their income, build long-term financial freedom. And if you are following him on LinkedIn, if you're not, you should give him a follow. But if you are following him on LinkedIn, you'll see his post about how he wants you to stop giving away all your money to Uncle Sam and keep it in your pockets. So I'm sure he'll cover some of that today, right? We're going to go through the difference between filing and planning, how to pay yourself first without putting the firm at risk, right? Some of the cracks, right, that are costing you time, taxes, and control. We're going to get to all of it. But before we really dive into the questions, Frank, here, just so that everybody does know, it's a question that always gets asked. Yes. Hold on. Yes, this is being recorded. You can check out the replay on legalphoenix.com or subscribe to the Legal Phoenix YouTube channel. Feel free to use the chat, connect with others, network, and if you'd like, drop your questions into the Q&A. At the end of the session, if you do want some more information from Frank or you're interested to hear how LegalFenix might be able to help you, take the 5 seconds for the post-session survey, and we'll be sure that we get in touch with you. But without further ado, Frank, you ready to tackle this here?
I am ready, my friend. Let's go.
All right. So let's frame the conversation a little bit, right? We've talked a lot about how firm owners are planning for everything except really their own finances, right? Like, why do you think that happens so often?
They're busy. And I'm glad they're busy. I want you to be busy. I'm busy too. But a joke that I sometimes say is you'll spend 5 to 10 hours planning a 2 week vacation. You won't spend an hour a week, maybe 2 hours a month planning your financial future. Sounds a little upside down to me. You
That's
know,
right. So when you are sitting down, for the first time, what are some of the biggest surprises that you're uncovering where their money is actually being spent?
uh, their money is being spent. Well, here, let's rephrase that.
Sure.
It's not necessarily where their money is being spent, it's how their money is being spent. And in many cases, it's just being spent. So what do I mean by that? There's no cash flow awareness. There's no budgeting. It's just money comes in, I win a big case, I settle a big case, I get on a big client, I want to pay for this, I want to pay for Ron, I want to hire Ron, I want to hire two other people like Ron, and money just keeps going out the door and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So you have to be able to manage your cash flow. You have to be able to budget. And I say budgeting isn't handcuffs. It's just like guardrails. Let's have a plan so that you know what's coming in. What's regularly coming in, right? Track that. And then what are you regularly spending on? And then what's left? That's what we have to do something with. But if you don't have a plan, you're just going to be a spendthrift.
I run into it all the time, Frank. There are firms out there that are investing aggressively in paid search channels, even SEO, right? But no one has really defined success to understand what the outcomes are supposed to be. Sometimes there's some bloat, right? Maybe the agency isn't on top of what they should be doing. They're bidding on keywords that aren't converting. They're just unsure why they aren't getting the results that they need. We've talked about the differences, or we said that we would share the difference between filing versus tax planning, or that filing is not tax planning. What does
Yeah.
that actually mean in practice?
So tax filing is essentially reporting the history. This is what happened. Here's what you owe. Ron, write me a check for $88,000 and put it in the mail by April 15th, right? There's no options with that. You're just reporting history. Tax planning allows you to write the future so you know what your history is going to be by having, and I'm not a CPA, so let's get that out in the open right away. I'm not a
Okay.
CPA. I don't file tax returns. Yes, we understand them. We can read them. And we're aware of some of the tax advantages and deductions that are available to you. But by actually having a tax plan, now you're actually looking at areas where you can save on taxes. And in many cases, put money away for yourself that you wouldn't be able to do if you weren't saving on those taxes.
We're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, but I'm always a fan of ensuring that all the stakeholders involved in the marketing ecosystem are collaborative. So I have to assume that some of your most strategic and thoughtful clients, like they're bringing the CPA in to work with you. Are they bringing and like maybe someone else that might be doing some of the life planning or insurances or things like that? Like, how does that all work? How do you work with the other individuals to make sure that they've got a comprehensive approach to this and not just looking at it in a silo?
Yeah, that's a great point. It really boils down to us being the quarterback of a lot of this. Now, sometimes it'll be the CPA. It really depends on the situation of the client. But we work with 4 or 5 different CPAs on a fairly regular basis, and we're consistently on the phone or in a virtual meeting together. Sometimes they're on a meeting with a client. Sometimes it's just myself and the CPA, my business partner, who happens to be watching this as we're here. Um, but yesterday, for example, I was talking to a CPA that we have a common client with, and he and I have been on the phone at least once a week over the past 2 months because there's some big things that this firm is doing. So it's a lot of collaboration. We want to make sure we're on the same page. So we get the CPA involved. If there's a business attorney who's drafting an operating agreement, you should even have an operating agreement if you're a sole proprietor. You want to have that that system out there so that you know what's going to happen. And um,
Andrew agrees.
yes, I see that. And the estate planning attorney. You'd be surprised, although maybe you wouldn't, how many law firm owners don't have their documents done. So when we're doing our planning, whether it's tax planning, insurance planning, wealth management, we're not only looking at it at a high level, but we're digging into the areas that they need to focus on and that they want to focus on. So we're trying to coordinate all that and essentially act as the quarterback to bring everybody together.
Love it. I very quickly thought that I saw someone raise their hand. I'm sorry if I missed it. If you do have a question, throw it into the Q&A, and I promise that we'll get to it. Right. We've talked a lot, Frank. Like there's so many different components of this, different stakeholders, different individuals, different strategies that you're going to try to help them put into place. And very similar, I think, to marketing. There's or intake specifically, things can sometimes slip through the cracks, right?
Yes. Yes.
Whether it's, you've got a lot of time, control. Like, can you walk us through what some of those cracks are and how they might show up in your day to day?
So this is what we see a lot of. And again, I mentioned at the beginning, as a law firm owner, you're going 110 miles an hour. And while you think that's great, it's not necessarily a badge of honor because you're going to miss out on things. So, of course, there's no tax planning. I'll talk to 10 law firm owners, and half of them are going to say, do you know somebody that's a CPA that's going to be a little bit more proactive, right? So that's where that starts. Your finances are a little disorganized. You know that junk drawer that you have in the kitchen that's got the knives, the tools, the screwdriver, the hammer, the screws, the nails, the duct tape, right? Well, some people's finances, unfortunately, look that way, and it's very hard for you to plan when you don't see how things are aligned. Another thing that could be big for a lot of people, especially the small and solo, is your entity setup might not be correct. You might be operating as a sole proprietor, but if you operate as an S corp, you can save yourself on some taxes. We can get into that more a little bit later. There's no system for wealth building. You're just putting money away if and when you feel like it, and that's not a road to financial freedom. And lastly, I would say of the five items that we want to bring up is there's no succession plan for yourself,
Mhm.
and there's no protection plan for yourself.
Do you think one of those cracks is actually doing more damage over time? And is there a reason why it's so overlooked?
The biggest bill that we all are going to have during our lifetime is taxes. So if you're not taking care of your tax planning, that will be the biggest expense of your life. And it doesn't need to be. You just need to have some time and focus on your tax planning. I'll give a quick example if I can.
Yeah,
I've
of
been
course.
working with somebody for about 9 years, maybe 10. We've saved this individual close to $400,000 or more just on things that we've done for them in tax planning. They've also been able to accumulate close to $2 million of wealth just with what we've been doing for them. So imagine not having done that. All that money gets wasted. You pay Uncle Sam all that money that's not going to your financial future. So it's worth the time to spend and address it because if you don't, you're going to get to your retirement, your wind down age, whatever, and you're going to wonder what have I been doing with all my money?
All right, we got two questions come in. We'll tackle them both in the Q&A. Thank you, Robert. Great question here. How do you shop for a Frank? Do you simply search for tax planning? What questions should we ask to make sure that we're getting what we need? I always assume that CPAs should also be strategic, but sounds like I may be wrong.
How do you shop for me? Well, that's a great question. I think that you got to be careful with the financial planner advisor that you work with. We, I have a saying that I say often in my LinkedIn posts, and I think it's even in my bio. We start with a person to serve, not a product to sell. Now, a product may come in to the play, right? A product may end up being a solution, but we're here to serve our client, right? That's why we ask a lot of questions. We went to a workshop many years ago, and we learned that everybody who thinks a meeting went well, the meeting went well because they talked a lot. I don't like to talk a lot when I'm in my initial meetings. I like to ask questions, and I want you to tell me what's going on. What are you looking for? What are your goals? Why do you feel that way? A lot of times on our first call, I'm going to say, why are we here today? What happened today that brought you here? I'm
Mhm.
not going to give any suggestions, but you're going to tell me. So it's making sure that you like the person that you're going to work with. Ask them as many questions as you want. What makes you different? What makes me different? The statement that I gave at the beginning, we lead with serving our client. We don't work for a specific firm or company, so we have the whole world available to us, so we don't have a proprietary product. And because we've been working with law firm owners and attorneys for such a long time, we know and understand a lot of the problems and concerns that you have. One of which is your time is valuable, and we get it. So we try to make our meetings as efficient and as effective as we possibly can so you can get back to work.
Second question, a little bit of a different approach, not necessarily within the law firm. Thank you, Tyler, but this is from a legal services support company. They offer web marketing, SEO type of products.
Okay.
Right? Should we be pushing lawyers in to spend heavier in months prior to tax season? Do we do our plan of actions focus around spending in peak months and then lower down and during down months?
Yeah, that's a good question because of the cash flow, how things come in, and that
Yeah,
probably relates a lot to like the personal injury type firm, uh, criminal
very
law.
dependent upon practice.
Yeah, they're dependent upon those big dollars, coming in, and then when they come in, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? So again, it's going to vary. Obviously, you need to know what you need to spend your money on. You need to have some basics, and you need to address those situations kind of as they come. When you're early in your law firm's career, it's going to be very sporadic, just like it would be if you're a financial advisor. Your income is kind of up and down and all over the place until you kind of hit your your stream where it's a little bit more level, right? But you have to pay attention to the cash flow. Just because you win a big case doesn't mean you should start buying all this equipment or buying a property, or okay, let's get a car and write off the car. You have to be very, very careful with how you're spending that money. So by having good advisors with you, they'll help you stop that emotional decision, which can all of a sudden hurt you if you don't do it the right way.
Frank, we've got a great captive audience here. I love you guys. This is awesome. You're making my job super easy. The questions keep on coming. Next one from Andrew. You may cover this later, so just push back, Frank, if you'd rather me continue down the path that we had discussed earlier. But you may cover this later, but what numbers should we be looking at to get an idea if we are doing okay or if we need to bring Frank over to help us?
First number, how much are you paying Uncle Sam?
Okay.
If it feels like a lot, it probably is. And if you haven't been suggested to do anything about that, either you need a different CPA or you need to talk to somebody who can help you minimize that. A big area where we see not being set up properly besides the entity structure is retirement planning. That's one of the big places where you can minimize your taxes today. Obviously, that creates a tax problem in the future. We ultimately might get to that during this conversation. But you're making 4, 5, 600,000, $1 million a year that you're actually making, not revenue for the firm, but you're putting in your pocket at the end of the day. How much in taxes are you paying? And are you doing a few other things that can help minimize those taxes? I think that's where the big void comes into play.
Very fair. All right, we answered these live. Good stuff. Keep the questions coming, everyone. I'm going to jump back in. We're going to finalize some of the cracks that we talked about, Frank. I know that you have shared like your one-page document, and maybe this is how you approach helping owners identify blind spots, right, in their financial setup that they don't even know exist. I know that you shared that on LinkedIn before. You put some characters in there. I don't know if it was The Simpsons or Seinfeld, but you've got a sheet, right? You
I
post a
I
lot, Frank.
I think it's the
Bit.
the 5 areas that law firm owners often miss. I don't know. I kind of lose track with some of this stuff, but
Okay.
we kind of covered it in the cracks.
Okay.
So those are really the things that you should be paying attention to. I think, and one thing I do want to mention, I'm not here to judge anybody. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've seen a lot. I've seen people who have been in really great shape who think that they're not in such good shape. And I've seen people who are just now starting to make good money, but they feel embarrassed because they don't have enough, saved up or invested. The the best thing I can say is, if you're with me, you're here today. We're going to start, and we're going to get you moving forward. I'm not going to judge you for anything that's happened in the past. Can't fix that. Let's just work on moving forward. And the other thing too is that a lot of law firm owners feel apprehensive about meeting with someone because they don't want to get financially undressed. Like, oh, Frank is going to find out all this information about me, and then he's going to find out that I haven't really done much for myself. You know what? I'm not here to hit you over the head because of that. I'm here to help you move forward and forget about the past. We can't fix that. Let's just make sure that we're not compounding that mistake.
Sure. All right. Great stuff. Appreciate the chatter, everyone. Let's talk about building the foundation, Frank. Let's say we've got a brand new, not necessarily a brand new law firm owner, but maybe they just hung up their own shingle. They've started to, they've gone out on their own. They're growing quickly. I know it's going to depend, but where are they typically starting? Cash flow tackling? We going to taxes? Is it retirement planning? Like fresh new client for you. What's your start?
Well, we always want to find out where you are currently in your financial situation. What have you done up to this point, if anything? Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. Then we want to find out what's the income flow looking like? What does the cash flow look like? And what does the expense list look like? What are the must-have expenses? What are the shiny objects that maybe you don't need, or maybe we can, reduce or streamline a little bit. So budgeting is very important. The last thing I want to do is have somebody, I don't want to say overspend, but overcommit to something, and then in 6 months say, Frank, I can't keep up with this anymore. I can't stay on track with this. It's starting to choke me. So we want to move in a progressive manner. One of the things, I think the biggest things that we can do is, we can start with an actual financial plan. This allows us to see everything that you have, and it allows us to then project forward with what your goals and what your objectives are, and what do you want out of your life in the future. You can have a retirement that's almost as long or maybe longer than your working years. If you have 30 years in retirement, you might have been working for 30 years. Do you want a reduced lifestyle? I don't think anybody wants a reduced lifestyle. And then there's always, well, I'll be in a lower tax bracket when I retire. Think about that. Do you really want to be in a lower tax bracket? That means you're actually making less money than you were when you're working. Now, there are ways we can get you there, but those people who say that aren't aware of what those ideas really are.
Right, another one coming in, Q&A. Sounds like cash flow metrics, they are important KPIs to keep an eye on. Any other leading indicators that you would suggest firms keep a thumb on to make sure things are going to plan once that is in place? Thank you, Robert.
I think a proper retirement plan setup is key. There's a lot of different options, and there's a lot of ways to set up, for example, your 401k plan. You want to be able to maximize that, which you can still do by December 31st if you haven't. So there's a tip for you. If you haven't put in the max and you can afford to do the max, put in the max, right? Do you have a profit sharing plan in place, right? And even if you have staff members, other attorneys, it's a way to keep them with you, because you're going to make a contribution. It's deductible to your firm, right, as an expense. But you're also going to say, okay, hey, Ron, we're making a profit sharing contribution. I'm just going to say a number, $10,000 for you this year. Okay, great. That's 10 grand that Ron didn't have before. Next year, that might be another $10,000 or $12,000, and that keeps multiplying. So that's a way to keep you at the firm, number one. But number two, the way to really keep you is to put a vesting schedule on that. So look, if you leave, you're only going to get a portion of this money unless you've been here for X amount of years. Then it's 100% yours. So retirement planning is really one of the biggest ways where you can set yourself up for your future, and also maintain and keep the good people that you have working with you, because you're actually putting money, giving money to them because of the good work that they're doing.
All right. Thank you. Keep the questions coming, everyone. This is a pre-submitted one, and this comes up a lot, Frank, with especially like the circles that we run around with, individuals that are serving the legal community, starting their own companies, right? Trying to figure out, what does paying yourself first look like, right? Like, how do you balance that? And I've even struggled with this. How do I balance that with then like reinvesting back into the business? Because like, I'm not out here trying to build this company just to skim off of the top. I want to invest in growth. So like, it's a conundrum. What do you recommend?
Yeah, it is. So the one thing, again, look at your entity structure, right? If you're a solo and you're operating as just an LLC or a sole proprietor, you need to take a look at potentially operating as an S corp. Again, I'm not a CPA. Talk to your CPA about that. But you're going to end up paying self-employment tax on income that you probably shouldn't be. So one thing is set up an S corporation, and if you have that, okay, great. Step one. Step two, pay yourself a wage, meaning pay yourself a W-2 wage. Now that's the conundrum as far as, well, what does that look like? How much should that be? I've talked to CPAs and I've talked to other people. A rule of thumb might be 30 to 40% of profit should be your W-2, approximately, right? Your CPA can calculate and figure out what that really looks like and how that affects you. But I think an example I ran for somebody a couple of months ago is I think they were at like a 350 or 375 income. As a sole proprietor, they were going to pay about 35,000 in taxes. If they switched to an S corp and paid themselves a salary, I think it was like 120 or 150,000, and then took the rest as distribution, they were going to save themselves about $14,000 in taxes. So one move like that, multiply that over 10 years, it's a lot of money. And then you can take those savings and do something else with them.
I'm fine admitting my naivety here, right? But like, is there a certain revenue threshold where, like, I always thought, for example, you just threw out 375, and maybe that was just an example, but based off of
Yeah,
the research that I've done and I've read and conversations with my lawyer and financial advisor, I always thought it was more so like once you get to the 750 mark, depending upon employees and other things like that, is that not the case? So you could
not
do
the
it
case.
sole proprietor, LLC, they are an LLC, but you're saying make the shift, go to S corp in that situation so that you can get tax relief.
And again, check with your CPA, right? There is a number, maybe it's under $200,000, maybe it's 150-ish, 175, where it might not make sense to do that, right?
Okay.
But again, work with your CPA on that. But I think right around 300, 350 is probably the number that you should consider to have that S corporation set up.
All right. Good thing I'm talking to my accountant later. All right. Next question, Andrew. Thank you. So, do you advise the firm on how to set these benefits, profit sharing, for example, or is it more about planning for the firm owners and you use a separate company for the benefits piece?
So we will advise if so typically we're going to work with the owners. That's where it starts. Sometimes it filters down to working with some of the associates and maybe a paralegal or whoever needs some personal financial planning. We're happy to do that. But it starts with the owner, but invariably it will then trigger helping them set up their retirement plan, helping them set up their profit sharing plan. If there's really good cash flow and they're making very good money, then we can advance that even more and look at what we call a cash balance plan, which will allow the firm to put away six figures into a retirement plan for the future. And that's where you can save some significant dollars in taxes by doing that. So you're kind of using the government to fund your retirement plan a little bit. But you put away $200,000 as an example we just recently did. I think that saved somebody about 60 grand in taxes. Just that one move alone. Again, do that over 10 years. It's over $500,000 in taxes that you saved. Why
I'm gonna
wouldn't you
sneak,
want to do that?
I'll sneak this one in there, even though this might have been your recommendation, but this is a pre-submitted questions about firms that do have cash reserves. How do they think about like that liquidity versus the opportunity cost and putting it to some other financial vehicle?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you want to have an emergency fund. You want to have money that's there
Just in
three,
case.
3 to 6 months of expenses, right?
Mhm.
Not only personally, but also for your business, because you never know what's going to happen. You got a few clients that aren't paying on time. You need to pay some bills, right? Also, what sometimes we're starting to suggest a little bit more is make some contributions into that or even a separate fund to pay for your taxes. Because look, nobody likes paying taxes. It's even worse if you don't have the money to pay for it.
So we've talked about the strategy here, and we talked about the difference between the role you play and CPAs play. But who really owns which piece here? Like, who's telling you what and when to do all these things that you're recommending? Is it driven by you? Is it driven by another advisor, the CPA? Like, where do you go? Like, I even struggle a lot with this because I have employees that are in different states. I'm based in New York, but someone in Washington, someone in Oregon, right? So, like, the tax consequences for each of those individuals is different. What I've got to pay to the
Yeah.
state, right? And I admittedly, like, I struggled. I went to my business attorney. I did get everything through my PEO. I then also went to my CPA. And sometimes I'm just like, maybe I need a Frank. But like, who is the contact that like helps me or helps firms centralize all this so that the strategy is cohesive and all the moving pieces know what, like, I guess the left hand's got to know what the right's doing. I don't know if that's the right analogy here.
So I think when we're working with a proactive CPA who is aware of, the tax planning issues, I don't expect the CPA to be aware of how all the different retirement plans work. That's not their wheelhouse, and it shouldn't be their wheelhouse. On my side of it, entity structure, looking at some of the different tax credits and tax deductions that you can have, we're aware of, but I leave that to the CPA to actually implement that. I leave it to the CPA to how to structure your salary and your distribution, but we're working it together. So if we have a really good relationship with that CPA, it's really between us. I can make a recommendation, the CPA can agree with it, or maybe they can shoot it down because of ABC. They can make a recommendation, and maybe I shoot it down because of ABC. But the important thing is to keep that line of communication open so that the ideas are flowing, and then we
Mhm.
try to find the right mix for the right situation. Because there's no cookie cutter to this. It really does depend, to use a lawyer term.
Listen, I could not agree more. And that's one of the things that I feel like the value that we then provide to the lawyers, ensuring that the lines of communication are open. Because, like you started off with, they're busy, they're on trial, they're in depths, they're doing consults, they're trying to run a business, their own finances, they've got families, right? So,
Yeah.
when the clients that we're working with, the agencies are coming to them, we need approvals, we need to know which direction we're going, we need to know the feedback. Are these qualified leads? Are you retaining them? Right? And they are busy and cannot get them that feedback. The loop is those lines of communications get choked, right? So
Yeah.
we do
Yep.
try to open them up, but I have a great appreciation for taking that type of collaborative uh, approach to it, because that's how we all get on the same page to ensure we're aiming at the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we can't be enemies with each other because we can't be fighting with each other. And I work with a lot of our clients that are out of state as well. Sometimes if they're in a state that has either unusual tax processes or programs, and they want to find another CPA, well, do you want someone who's actually working in your state or who's familiar with your state? California is one of them. I think Illinois would be another. New York is probably another. I mean, yes, I know guys and gals in Florida, but I also know people elsewhere, and hopefully I know someone in the state of the individual that I'm working with, because you want them to be aware of what the rules are that pertain to them.
Frank's being humble. He knows people everywhere. He knows people everywhere. All right, let's move over to retirement and long-term planning. Again, any questions, let us know. We're pacing pretty well here. Still do have a lot to cover. As far as retirement plan options, what makes the most sense for firm owners, right? How should they decide between the 401k? We talked about the cash balance. Is it a defined benefit plan? What are the considerations they've got to take into account?
So considerations are A, how many people are in the firm, right? If you're a solo, there's IRA, but you're you're probably making more than the number is that you can qualify to put money in the IRA, right? And an IRA deduction is only $7,000. So that's the most you can put into an IRA. Unless you're 50, you can put in another $1,000. So you can do a solo 401k, which has the same rules as a regular 401k. Very inexpensive to set up. You can layer on top of that a profit sharing plan. Okay. If you have more than just yourself, same thing. Traditional 401k. You can also um, layer profit sharing on top of that, and you can structure it depending on how many employees that you actually have. Now, sometimes we're going to use what's called a simple IRA. Simple IRA has a little bit less um, paperwork, pretty simple, obviously, to set up, um, but the maximum contribution is less than a traditional 401k. So if you're a solo or a small firm and you're not going to be able to put away $23,500, maybe you only are able to put away $10,000 or $12,000. It might make more sense for us to do a simple IRA. You can put away up to 16,500. The only catch with the simple is you have to match for your employees that participate, and we can discuss what that looks like in a personal meeting. So
Mhm.
it's the difference of trying to find out what are you trying to accomplish. So if I say to you, are you intending on putting away the maximum? No, I can't. I only can do 15,000 this year. I probably will only do 10,000 or 12,000 next year. So if we're not going to hit that limit, it might not make sense to do the 401k. But again, we have to examine it because I want you to know what the objectives are, and I want you to know what the rules are. Profit sharing on top of that, and we always make the profit sharing discretionary, meaning you don't have to make a contribution. So some years you will make them, but in years where for whatever reason you don't want to make one, you don't have to make it, right? That's why it's discretionary. And then the cash balance or defined benefit plan comes into play for high income earners. Income is consistent, and they have the money put away, six figures. Could be $200,000, could be $250,000. Depends on the makeup of the firm, depends on your age, your salary, and time of service for people. So all that determines how much you can actually put away.
All right. I remember when I first jumped into legal, again, 15, 20 years ago, I had this personal injury client. I'll never forget him. I won't name drop him just in case he's listening, but he told me about underinsured motorist coverage and, he guided me anyway. This was 2010, 2011. But that year, Frank, he said, I'm hanging it up. I'm retiring next year. He's still practicing today. He's still practicing, right? So I feel like there's a lot and I've heard and I've run into that a lot of times before, and it's almost like the lawyers are planning to never retire, right? So how do you help them think? Maybe it's a mindset shift, but like balancing financial freedom also without necessarily like hanging it up, right? And walking away from the practice. Is there a way that they can kind of get the best of both?
The ones that I know who have said that they were going to retire, just like you said, have not retired. They
They
just
love it. They
they
don't want
they
to.
they they love what they do. They just can't figure out a way to walk away because then it's like, well, I can only golf so many times a week. I can only play tennis or pickleball. I can only do so much traveling. I need to feel like I'm involved. So they hang on, and that's okay. A lot of our clients are not at retirement age. They're not even. Most of them aren't even close. Most of the clients that we're working with are mid to late 30s up through about 50-ish, maybe 55. We don't have very few people that make up our client base are actually retirement age. There's a couple, and I'll see one or two of them at a bar association lunch or event, and they're still hanging around and working. So I don't even ask people when you want to retire anymore. It may just be, so Ron, what does what does life look like in 20 years from now? And then you
Okay.
start to tell me, and because retirement means different things to different people. This is a business where you don't have to retire. I've been doing this for 30 years. I have no plans on retiring anytime soon. So don't any of you be worried about Frank's going to hang it up in a couple of years. No, Frank is not because Frank loves what he does. But I also have a business partner behind me. She's younger than me. Then I've got our team behind us, and they're all younger than both of us. So we're not going anywhere.
It's funny, little personal anecdote. When we do our
Yeah,
financial
exactly.
planning with my wife here, when we look at retirement, I'm like, why does yours stop so soon and mine just keeps going? I'm just keep working here, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
we joke about that. Let's cover just some quick mistakes. Obviously, firm owners are going to want to set up, manage retirement accounts, or like what are some of the things that they should be avoiding when they first do that? Or what are some of the mistakes that you found firms go in when they are setting up or managing retirement accounts?
Just having the wrong structure. You know,
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to get into too much detail on a call like this, but you have to make sure you've got the right setup. If you haven't set up a retirement plan yet, there's a tax credit waiting for you for the first 3 years of your plan. I believe it's up to $5,000 a year of a tax credit, not a deduction, tax credit, which is a big difference for setting up a retirement plan the first 3 years. You'll pay the fee for whatever the setup and admin costs are. You have to actually pay it out, but when you do file your tax return, you'll actually get the tax credit. That's just the way the IRS has that set up. It's just don't be over aggressive in the plan that you set up. It's probably the best advice that I can give anybody. That's why I always get, here's all the options. This way, or this way. We got to work towards the one that is the most comfortable for you.
All right. Let's go and shift towards more the protection and risk management and talk about some protection gaps. So there's a lot of risks, right? A lot of risks. Most firm owners are probably underestimating when it comes to income or insurance or succession. What are the gaps here, Frank? What do they got to watch out for?
So I'm going to quote somebody who, in our financial services world, is a well-known investment advisor, and now he writes books. He teaches financial advisors about financial planning and investments. But his name is Nick Murray. He said once on a meeting a few years ago, if your financial plan is not built on a rock solid foundation of life, disability, and long-term care insurance, it's built on sand. So take a few seconds and think about that. Everything is at risk. So you make $400,000, $500,000. That's great. How much life insurance do you have? Oh, I got $1 million. Fantastic. I'm glad you thought enough to get $1 million of coverage. Are you coming back from the dead? What are you talking about? It's about 2 years of income. Now what? And then I just wait for the answer, right? Most people are underinsured. How much do you need? Ballpark, 10 to 15 times your income. But again, it depends. What else do you have? But you got 2 kids, you got a house with a mortgage, you got student loans, you got regular expenses, a couple of car payments, you got a boat. It varies, but you got to have a lot more than you think you have. $1 million used to be a big number many, many years ago. Now it's barely average. The other thing is protecting your income. If you get sick or hurt and you can't work, what's your plan? And I shut up. I wait for the answer, right? Because if you don't have an income to pay for all the things that we just talked about, your mortgage, your cars, private school, the loan repayment for your student loans, your regular expenses, how are you going to live? There's also protection for your business expenses. So not only are you protecting your own income if you can't work, but now your firm generates $15,000 to $20,000 as an example of business expenses. Where's that going to come from? Right? So there's protection for that. And then probably one of the biggest things protection-wise that's overlooked is protection for a long-term care health event. And I hope none of these things happen to anybody. But again, when they do, what's your plan? Your assets are completely at risk if you have a health situation that doesn't allow you to work, doesn't allow you to earn a living, but also requires that you receive care. Are you willing to take from your nest egg $400,000, $500,000 and set it aside for a what-if moment? And I'm not making that number up because I know what we spent for my mom and my aunt while they were going through long-term care. That's a real number, right? So transfer that risk to an insurance company for, as old as this stupid phrase is, pennies on the dollar. You can protect your assets because these situations, they're emotionally draining. They can sometimes be physically draining. They're mentally draining. They don't have to be financially draining. There are ways to, avoid this and protect yourself. And you're also creating wealth for the future. Your children, your grandchildren, and you're also potentially putting them in a better financial situation for their future.
We've we have covered a lot already in these 45 minutes. So let's talk about implementation and about, mindset so that everyone on the call, everyone that watches the recording can take away some of these insights and have some actionable steps as to how they can get themselves in a better financial position. So you started the call saying a lot of the firm owners that you are working with are just simply too busy to plan, right? They spend all this time scheduling the vacation, or we're not knocking them, but we're not spending that
Yeah.
on our finances. Are you providing recommendations, or like what is it that you are telling them to get them to carve out the time so that they can build some momentum just to get this stuff started?
Yeah. So we have what's called the discovery tool. That's just what it's called.
All right.
So, lawyer term, that's just what it is. We didn't make it up. We didn't design the program. So it's a link that I can send to you, and you put in your basic information. It's very simple to fill out. Probably take you 15 minutes tops. That comes back to me. We analyze it. We get on a strategy call. We find out where you're good, where you're not so good, and what's completely missing. We'll make a recommendation or two. If you like what we say and you like what you hear and you feel comfortable working with us, we move forward. It can be as simple as that to get started. The heavy lifting is really on our end at the beginning. Yes, at some point, we're going to need some documents. Don't worry about that up front. The most important document you can send in the beginning is your tax return, at least one of them, if not two. But this discovery tool allows us to see where you're at, and we can put we'll put your entire financial picture on one page. And I think I've posted about that numerous times with our asset map tool. That gets us in the game, that gets us moving forward, and it creates progress. And then we just have short, efficient, and effective meetings, and we keep moving along.
You used this phrase earlier in the call. The hesitancy to move forward is because a lot of these owners do not want to get quote unquote financially undressed. How do
Yeah.
you get them over that embarrassment so they don't feel like they're behind? Got an idea as to where you're going to go with this one, but for anyone else watching,
I just like to preface the conversation and say, look, Ron, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to hopefully make your financial future better, give you peace of mind, and give you the financial freedom that you're looking for. Don't worry about what things look like. Don't worry about what you haven't done. Be proud that you're here. You've seen that this is something that you want to tackle. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today. And let's just work on that and let's move forward in a positive manner. I can't say much more than that because otherwise it starts to sound like fluff, but that's
sure.
really what it is.
What's the normal cadence, right? How often should you be connecting with these individuals? How often do you review it? When are you making changes? I know it's going to depend, but
Yeah.
traditionally,
So usually when a relationship starts out, we'll have our discovery meeting. You'll get the link. It comes back to me a week to 10 days later. We're having our strategy meeting after we've analyzed the information. And then we start moving along with maybe a meeting every couple of weeks for the first 60 days. Short, 20, 30 minutes. I mean, if they go longer, it's because we're talking and we're having good conversation about, last night's baseball game, tonight's hockey game, whatever it is. But short, efficient. Within 90, sometimes 120, but usually within 90 days, we have the initial, or what we call the first edition of the financial plan done. Okay. And then whatever needed to be worked on either in between or after that, whether it's, setting up your retirement plan, adding insurance, looking at long-term care, opening up an investment account, doing, education plans for your children, whatever it is, we start working on that. But we go in order of what is most important. We meet every quarter. Now, if you don't want to have a quarterly meeting, you got to tell me. If you want to meet more than that, great. We'll meet more than that. But we at least need to meet every quarter. And over the course of a year, one of those meetings is going to be like a major meeting because we want to make sure we're covering everything. And we're going to cover different things at different times. But that's typically the cadence.
all right. Listen, Q&A has calmed down. You're dropping a lot of knowledge here, Frank. Let's reward those that have stayed all the way to the very end here. We've covered a ton. Yes, everyone, this will be shared and recorded, but from everything that we discussed today, let's lay out some of the steps that owners can take now, right, before the end of the year to minimize taxes, set themselves up for a strong Q1 and an even better 2026?
So what I would say is make sure you maximize your retirement plans. Take a look at what you've put away so far and make sure that if you can, you're maximizing those plans. I would also take a look at making sure your entity structure is correct. That's a big one. Work with your CPA on that and also work with your CPA on structuring your compensation. If you haven't paid yourself any W-2, take a look and see how much W-2 you should pay yourself because you're going to save yourself some money on the taxes. Any purchases you need to make, whether it's equipment, it's furniture for your office, whatever, make them now. You still have time. Jokingly, I'm part of a networking group, and last year in December, I said the membership fee is whatever it was. I go, write your check today. You can get a tax deduction this year. And one person ran to her office and wrote the check. So you got until December 31st, right? There's still some things you can do. Look at there's some charitable giving, church, synagogue, an organization that you belong to. Look at those. Those are like the simple things to look at. Again, it's big on tax planning. I think that's like my foot in the door kind of thing, but it's the biggest expense that you're going to have over your lifetime. So you still have time to do things right now before the year's up. And by having a conversation, there's still some things that you'll be able to do in 2026 that count for 2025.
The marketing guy and me can't help myself here, but if you are doing those donations or scholarships or sponsorships or any sort of charitable donations, make sure you're working with your agency so that you could squeeze as much juice as you can out of that and turn it into some sort of PR backlinking opportunity. Throw them a bone, promote it on social. It is goodwill, but you also want to get the good word out, right? And if you're going to be investing as much as you are investing in some of your marketing, make those dollars go a little bit further. All right, before we officially wrap up here, if anybody else has some, thank you, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce.
If anybody else has some questions, throw them in the chat. Unless it's likely you'll just see me and Frank here talking shop about the NHL and about the heater that the Devils are on right now.
What is it, 8 in a row?
Oh, 8 in a row. Big win against Colorado. That was a really
that was a big win.
Showed a lot of adversity there going down, like just Jack Hughes. If that guy
He's a
just
heck of a player.
Throw on another 20 or 30 pounds and not get injured,
it
would be great. It would be great. It would
for
be
sure.
But Frank, can't thank you enough. Good
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you sharing everything here. If anybody does have additional questions, again, once we end this webinar, Frank and I are going to sneak backstage again just to wrap everything up, but you can answer that survey. Happy to help any way that we can. And I know Frank, even if he or I cannot help, we promise to point you in the right direction. So stay tuned for another LegalFenix webinar series next month. Those details will be announced very shortly, but we appreciate your time and attention. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.